Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Boyarsky, and I'm a venture fellow here at Newchip. For those of you who don't know, my role kind of consists of talking with investors, working with startups, and creating content so that everyone can find out more about this entrepreneurial journey. Today, I am joined by Lawrence Gennari, who is a lawyer in Boston and has a lot of great experience working with startups. He was previously a partner at Choate Hall and Stewart, and since then has started his own firm. We're really excited to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Jonathan, it's a pleasure, and so pleased that we got to know each other at BC Law School through our entrepreneurial interests, and I'm delighted you're doing this.
That's awesome. So just if you want to just by way of background kind of explain, how you got involved in startups, what your role is today and why you like working with them so much.
Yeah, you bet, you bet. So I've been doing work with startups for more than 2 decades, and I would say that this kind of corporate work from the legal standpoint can be among the most challenging because you really get to combine the best of um, uh, the entrepreneurial energy, somebody coming and creating a business that doesn't yet exist, with with the challenge of making sure that all of the legal T's and C's are appropriate so that they can launch this. When it comes down to it, the ultimate goal, the ultimate job of a business lawyer like myself is to help people be successful. And if you think about that as really a reason for getting up in the morning, it's a pretty powerful one and a pretty motivating one. So I love it. Every day is different. I get to meet new and interesting people. I get to read cool and interesting books. And it is wonderful looking at the world through the lens of an entrepreneur, where everything is new, challenging, exciting, and different.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. I think a lot of lawyers are really risk averse, so working with startups could kind of give them some trepidation. But for those of us that are kind of willing to, be a part of it and really enable that journey, it's a lot more exciting because you kind of get to sit along for the ride, but it's maybe not taking on the risk yourself. It's kind of a cool way to still be involved in this community, which might kind of turn off a lot of traditional lawyers. Cool. So what made you want to start your own firm? You were in big law for a while, which for those of you who don't know is kind of like the classic 180, 90-hour work weeks, high paying, but it's a lot of stress. And when you kind of go to your own firm, it sort of changes your approach and how you really handle everything.
You still have the stress, but it is different. And I think that the the motivational force that drives a lot of entrepreneurs to leave their big company to start their own thing is really the same, and was the same for me and my colleagues. And that is, for our clients, we just saw that big law was not always a fit for them, not because they weren't going to be able to get good, excellent service and advice and counsel, but it was really more around the structure of a large law firm isn't always conducive and supportive of the early stage company. So if you think of early stage companies as I do, a little bit like a Major League Baseball organization, you'll have major leaguers, AAA, AA, and single A. And then you have the players. It's very hard for a lot of law firms with their structure and their overhead to serve folks who are in the single and double A leagues, or even some of the individual players efficiently. And so they're really built for major league or large corporations. And so if you think about corporate work on a continuum, it's really the kind of work we do is here. You can grow with folks. We were talking before we started, we just finished a public offering for one of our clients, but at the same time, I met virtually with a couple of folks yesterday who are absolutely determined to leave a brand name Fortune 100 and start their own company because they see something different, they see a different path, and they see a way to do something in a more innovative way than they'd ever be able to do in an R&D setting where they are. So I think for me, leaving big law was an imperative to continue to serve the kind of people that I wanted to serve, entrepreneurs who truly felt that it might take some time to build their company, but they really felt like they wanted to develop a trusted advisory relationship, which is harder to do in a large firm, not because big firm lawyers and my former colleagues aren't really thoughtful, smart, dedicated people. It's just that the structure of that firm, which really rewards folks who can bring in the greatest number of clients who are willing to pay in upwards of $1,000 an hour,
Right.
doesn't necessarily fit a startup who might say, could we just talk about this idea?
Right.
And maybe we could whiteboard some concepts without having you charge me $1,000 an hour. It's
Right.
easier to say yes to that proposition, and a motivated and excited yes when there are 8 lawyers versus 800.
Sort of transitioning a little bit, this is where I think that entrepreneurs are really missing out, is you have a very well-connected network of VCs and angels who you have helped get financing for people. And I think that that is something that people don't even think about, that you've done this, hundreds of times. And so I think that viewing your attorney as more than your attorney is really the starting point of that, of creating and fostering a really great relationship.
It's like a relationship you might have with anybody else who you trust, Jonathan, whether it's a business advisor, a doctor, an accountant. Lawyers occupy a really unique position. The challenge, a lot of lawyers get a bad rap, and I'd like to think that that's more about folks who act unethically or chase ambulances. Not to insult our our colleagues who do personal injury work, but I think in the business world it's quite different. We keep secrets for a living, and we also should be teachers. For that reason, I like to be the kind of lawyer, it's why I became a lawyer, so that people can feel free to tell you anything and ask you anything. That's really foundational to the attorney-client relationship. And so it seems that it's just a more natural fit for business lawyers to do that. So someone will come in and say, can I do this? Well, what I'd really like to do, I've got a fintech startup, and what I'd really like to do is offer advice. And to the extent I can connect people to investment products, I want to take a percentage of the amount I'm selling. And you're listening as a lawyer in a different way than a business person would be. So you're immediately thinking, okay, how is this going to work? Where do the risks and liabilities lie? Mm-hmm. How can they actually create revenues and profits that they can keep legally?
Right.
And so you're doing that. And along the way, I think my approach as a business lawyer is not just to think about the mechanics of how the documents and the mechanics of how the business product or service is sold, but understanding that you can work hand in glove with other people who have done this before, whether they are investors, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and say, as I often do when I'm listening to somebody, say to myself, well, this is a really, really cool, interesting idea. Is this person willing to listen to other people? Because if they are, and they're interested in developing a true advisory network where they listen as much as they talk, this could really be something big. So I listen to every entrepreneur because I think there are so many that have an amazing idea, great energy, and the resources to create something wonderful and valuable. But in this interconnected, incredibly competitive world, it's so important to find people who have done it before. Surround yourself with the best possible people. I've always tried to do that. Hire people. Surround myself with people who are much smarter than I am, and who have done this a lot more, longer, different, better. And that, in and of itself, I think helps people be successful. So, if you're thinking about your role as a lawyer, your role as an accountant, your role as any kind of advisor, who else can I bring to the table that will help round out the experience that this entrepreneur has? How do we help her figure out that there is a way to do this, that there happens to be somebody who created products like that for somebody else, maybe in that industry, maybe in a slightly different industry, who I think they'd really get along with. So that you're all working as a team. So I think that most entrepreneurs who build a business as if it's a much bigger business from the beginning, or envision it as a much bigger business, always do better. And that means you've got to listen, as I've said in class. You know, God gave us two ears and a mouth and one mouth for a reason. We're supposed to do twice as much listening.
Yeah, no,
I think that's true of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I also think it speaks to, I think, relationship building and the network effect, which kind of go hand in hand, which is when you are willing to listen and sort of willing to learn, the network effect grows exponentially. Like just the other day, I was talking to an entrepreneur for the first time, and he's got a really cool app that's for timekeeping construction. It's called Tooler. And I was talking to the entrepreneur, Jordan, and he was just like so willing to learn. He was like, yeah, no, please, anyone you could put me in touch with, like anything. And then I immediately wanted to expand my entire network. And so I started reaching out to people, like just trying to figure out the industry more for him. And that's how like I could, you know, I was trying to find people to put him in contact with, talking to large construction companies, like just saying, hey, I just want to help out. Like I've got no skin in the game, but I just wanted to help you, because he was so enthusiastic, willing to learn and understanding. And I think that to your point about sort of building relationships, especially with attorneys, you know, it can really help you along the way. And I think that once you have that entrepreneur who's willing to listen, you're kind of willing to go much further for them and really, really help them out. So I think that's a really good point. On the nature of investing, you've kind of told me about how when, you know, an entrepreneur comes to you and they say, I'm trying to raise money, you also give good business advice and very sage advice, which is make sure you're only raising what you absolutely need to sort of get to the next milestone, which is what Brad Feld always says, and I can't implore. But also, you want them to come with a list of people who could give them money. So how do you leverage your network to really help your entrepreneurs grow in terms of, you know, financing and really making sure they're in a place where they can grow the business?
Well, you put your finger on it. I think it starts with the entrepreneur. The advisors can help supplement a list and can help put you in touch with someone. But ultimately for that entrepreneur, he or she really has to be the center of that universe. And the introduction, particularly a warm introduction, is helpful. There is no question that you or I respond much more readily and much more warmly to somebody who knows, somebody who we like and trust and have done business with. And there's a sense of integrity, and you're basically providing guilt, G-I-L-T, by association when you help your entrepreneurs connect with someone. And I think for an entrepreneur, they need to understand that having that relationship and having a meaningful and deep relationship with their advisors is going to be much more helpful than simply going onto LinkedIn. I mean, people have different views of this, and accepting every potential connection that comes your way. I, for example, won't really, I generally don't connect or accept invitations or send invitations to anybody that I haven't talked to or connected with in some way. Yeah. And so LinkedIn's a separate level of connecting, but for my entrepreneurs, I always try to think about who the best fit is. And fit isn't just a matter of chemistry, it's timing, it's market segment, it's got to fit into the entrepreneur's overall plan for financing. So for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's just about raising money. And what you want to say to them is, you have a revenue strategy, you have a product strategy, you need a financing strategy. So what is that? If you go to a lawyer or an accountant or a friend and say, want to raise $5 million from a venture capitalist, I would say to them that you're really putting form ahead of substance. Why do you want to raise 5 million? Then let's figure out where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
Why do you want to raise it? What is it going to do for you? Are there alternatives to giving up equity if that's what you're going to do? And I think that's important, not just to help somebody center their thoughts appropriately and really think about what they're going to do. But it's also realistic, because the vast majority of people will, who are in that camp, will come up against this pretty hard and fast, and that is venture capital folks are stewards of a limited pool of capital. They very much stick to market areas and market segments. And they've got to be quite discriminating, because they've got to, in turn, provide a reward for the folks who are investing with them. To do that, they need to look at a lot of things and therefore say no to a lot of things.
Yeah.
What does that mean for a lot of entrepreneurs? Well, it could mean that a busy and successful venture partner, well, she might look at 1,500 business plans and decide that 4 of them are suitable in a year. And, and if that's the case, and it often is, what are the other alternatives for that business? Can they raise a smaller amount from friends and neighbors? Could they, in these times, are there certain funds that might be suitable and interested in that kind of idea? Could you pull all of that together? Could you find a couple $100,000 from friends and neighbors, combine that with a grant of some kind? Is this a technology play? Could you get an SBIR grant? Could you reach out to one of the local research groups, Mass Life Sciences? I'm thinking in Massachusetts. So what's the broad, if you're going to do this, what's the broad mix of folks? What does that look like who are going to invest in your company? That's very different as a conversation than, can you, as my advisor, give me 4 names of venture folks who invest at that level so I can call them?
No, I think that's a fantastic point. And I was talking the other day that we were in a pitch coaching workshop, and this guy came and he had this logistics company, and it was really cool. And, we were talking to him, and he was saying how over the last 2 months, he has spent countless hours reading about the industry and finding out the depths of it and reaching out to people and talking. And I was like, I don't even care where your company is. I would bet on this idea. You are trying to figure it out. And that's why I love the entrepreneur who's like, oh, I'll take a meeting with anyone you've got. I just want to learn more. I want to hear about what this, and I think it really allows you to curate your solution and your product or service to the needs of the industry way, way better. And it allows you to expand your network and expand your product options, which are, oh, you found out that there's also this other thing that doesn't exist in the industry that would be an easy to build application. You are going to go so far. And I think that the best entrepreneurs are the ones who spend, are at 2 a.m. researching some obscure article on what logistics is missing, or here's 10 things that we need, and whatever it may be. And just talking to people and finding out more is sort of the best starting point for growing any business.
Very true. Very true.
Very awesome. Well, yeah. And so I got to ask you, do you ever want to start your own company? You see all these entrepreneurs, you see all these things. So what's your idea? What's the idea that you?
So I already did, I guess. The way I look at it is I already did. I get to be connected to so many other companies, being out here and being part of an 8-person firm, 8-lawyer firm, than being part of an 800-person firm. So I think that for me, when I think about starting something, I think about what is it that I can do to continue to reinvent what I do, to make it more relevant to people, and to actually help more people be successful. Greatest good for the greatest number of people. How can you do that? And so I like to think that all of us have time and ability to do that if we can find it. And so even in this pandemic, I am encouraging everybody that I talk to really use the time to be more thoughtful about learning and inhaling more books.
Yeah.
Whether it's on Audible or whether it's actually reading them. I have a stack behind me as I think through the Authors and Innovators event we're going to do this fall.
Yeah.
Particularly for entrepreneurs, one of the books that I have sitting here for a reason, First Pitch, Debbie Kleiman from Babson wrote it's a wonderful practical guide to pitching. And so because I've recently read it and think the world of Debbie and her great experience, I encourage people to read that. I also think that we really can be a more inclusive, thoughtful, innovative community if we read more broadly about history and how we can help, not just around understanding the reasons for the pandemic within a pandemic, which I think George Floyd's senseless killing really catalyzed over the last 6 weeks. But helping to understand that there are so many people who are marginalized outside this innovation community that you can help. And I know you and I have worked together on Project Entrepreneur at BC Law School. We're trying to help entrepreneurs who previously were incarcerated. And so we've got a whole group of people in this innovation community who could have viable businesses that support them, their families, their communities, if we think more broadly. So I think for me, starting a new business means starting a new perspective. How is it that from the perspective of what I do, helping lots of entrepreneurs, trying to help young lawyers like yourself understand that becoming a lawyer and having what that means these days, and having a legal education is among the most powerful and things that one can do. That you really have to, in addition to starting your new business, it's starting business in a new way. Yeah. And that I think means that you've got to be a heck of a lot more thoughtful about who you involve, how you involve them, building a diverse team. The number of clients that I talk to and say, tell me among your advisors, how do they match your customers? If you're going to tell me that half of your potential customers are women and you don't have a woman on your team, on your board, somehow involved in the company, you're missing a huge point and you're not going to be successful. If your work, your product, or your service involves taking in a diverse and changing customer base, how can you not understand? How can you not include a person of color? Persons of color, and follow the Rooney Rule in and throughout your company. So I do think that it's a great question about starting. If you ever thought about starting a new company, I really would hope and expect that a lot more people are going to be saying, how can I start something new within what I'm doing already? If I'm not, not everyone's an entrepreneur, as you know.
Right.
And for the folks who aren't, how can I do something new? I've said this to folks before, but in the pandemic, one of my favorite books that I went back to and still go back to and like a lot is Rabbi Harold Kushner's book, Living a Life That Matters. And I think it's a short book. It's a terrific book. And I think that we get so caught up in doing on a daily basis that we forget a whole lot about why we're doing something and what our hopes are. And you can't do this and get caught up in the motion
Yeah.
of being an entrepreneur with also without also understanding there ought to be a progress. There ought to be progress. So to me, being an entrepreneur, starting something anew, we have a new, fresh opportunity, all of us, to think about ourselves in a different way. And so I would tell every entrepreneur that I know you've got um, I know you've got a lot going on and your days are numbered. Every hour is accounted for. But if you're not taking time to step back and think about one of those things, and for me, it's reading.
Yeah.
Reading or listening.
Well, yeah.
Then you're missing out.
Yeah, no, I think that the you know, you touched on a lot of good points there, especially with just in terms of understanding the world and inequality and just really the world around us and anybody who kind of doesn't have the same opportunity, like how can we help them? And it's something that is really core to who I am. And I kind of thank my parents for really providing this perspective. But one of the semi-joking things that I say almost every single day, and I'm serious when I say it, but I'm joking because I say it every day, which is, what are we even doing here? And I always ask this question, like, what are we doing here? And I think that this is also good for entrepreneurs, not only in terms of the company they're building, but like so many entrepreneurs, you know, make it and become really successful. And when they become successful, like, let's say you sell your company for $50, $100 million. What are you doing here? Like, how are you going to make an impact on the world? And I think that everybody who has the ability to give back and make the world a fairer, more equal place has the obligation to do so. And so I think that that kind of answers the question of what are we doing here? It's, well, what do we owe to each other? And how can we really help people who might not have had the same opportunity? So I think that your points about sort of making the world a better place and just being really conscientious about that is imperative to sort of putting, you know, your community and your state and really everywhere that you are, even the whole world, just on a path towards a better place. So
Yeah, that's well put. That's well put. And it's one of the reasons we're both part of that community at BC, being men and women for others.
yeah,
And that's something that we can remember, even in the hustle and bustle and the craziness of the entrepreneurial and finance world. There is a reason that you're living the life that you're living.
mm-hmm.
And it's harder to step back and focus on that in the day to day. And if there's any silver lining, and I'm not sure there are a whole lot of them to the pandemic, it is that it has made all of us, I think, value time and value family and value our place, our unique place in the innovation community. And,
Yeah.
and if it hasn't, there's still time. That's what I would say to entrepreneurs.
No, I think that that's, you know, put very well, and that makes a lot of sense. And I hope that our viewers take that home with them, that, you know, you can use your skills and your abilities for good, and especially, you know, getting caught up in the entrepreneurial journey, we sometimes forget about that. But to sort of sit back and whether it's read or just reflect, you know, saying, well, what am I doing? How am I helping? So I appreciate that. And again, thank you for your time. This has been
Jonathan,
tremendous.
this is great. Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun, and I hope that I hope our conversation is useful to some folks and will resonate. And I would say to them, go for it. You got to do this. You have this one wonderful life, and this is a great way to spend at least part of it for you right now.